A lot of people over the past few days have been asking me to talk about Zoox, which is a little EV startup that Amazon bought earlier this year for $1.2 billion, which is actually a little bit lower than their own evaluation they gave themselves a few years ago. So how much tech is proprietary and what value this company actually has is a little bit uncertain, and there hasn't been too much talk about them until now because they didn't really have a product or a vehicle to unveil and kind of talk more about until recently, whereas a few days ago they uploaded a few videos detailing the Zoox mobile, basically, and how this is going to be the future for riders and transporting people in dense urban demographics. So I think that's something important to remember that a lot of people are forgetting. Zoox is just straight out coming forward and saying this is going to be good for cities in places where people are very close together and just need ride-hailing services to take them from point A to point B. And I think simply because of that demographic that Zoox is targeting, it is not exactly a threat to Tesla or a RoboTaxi killer or that kind of thing, especially when there's still so much, despite the unveiling and despite them talking about their technology and the software they're using, there's still not much we really know about these vehicles. I mean, we know it's around a 133 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is pretty big, and it is interesting, in my opinion, to have a design like this that kind of leapfrogs the whole generation of designing cars that are meant to be drived, which is interesting to me alone because, for one, I'm just a fan of bizarre looking cars, especially if they have functional reasons for looking bizarre, and I'm kind of interested in vehicles that kind of break the social norms and try to engage ourselves in new design techniques that haven't been used before, and the Zooxes definitely do that. It's one of the first vehicles we're seeing be designed that is literally not meant for humans to ever drive. If Zoox works properly, when they actually launch it, there won't be ever a need for a human to intervene, and in that way, it just kind of becomes a mini bus that people just walk inside and sit down. They can face each other, sit up to 4 people in this current model they're showcasing, and Zoox is claiming that the vehicle could operate for around 16 hours before needing to be recharged again. Very curious how they're reaching those numbers and what the average speed is for these vehicles, because I doubt that they're planning on having them go on freeways that often or for very long. It looks mostly to be like inner city travel. But either way, it is very, very interesting because they talk a lot about on their channel how because they don't have to design the car for a driver, they can make it, look like a toaster, of course, which we've all wanted to ride a toaster before. But more importantly, they've wanted to position camera sensors in optimum angles and radar sensors and LiDAR. Of course, we know Elon's least favorite technology in the world. Just kidding. He uses LiDAR in SpaceX. I know. It's just he doesn't really see the point in it with autonomous driving for points that I find pretty valid, which he says is evolved around solving the vision problem. So in order to achieve level 5 autonomy, your cameras have to get really, really good at detecting what is around them and finding those edge use cases. And cameras, once they are able to detect everything around it, and you can perfect the software and the full self-driving computer on the machine is able to detect everything around it, once you get there, LiDAR becomes a little bit redundant. So in the short term, for prototyping and machine development, LiDAR can be really, really helpful, but once you solve the vision problem, it's not that useful, and in circumstances like the fog or the rain, LiDAR can be not that useful in the first place. So Google Waymo is also finding those issues with using LiDAR themselves, but that's for a different video. It's important to keep in mind a few realistic timelines with Zoox because in interviews the CEO has said that they are not really willing to give a timeline on when consumers will actually be able to ride around in these things. And Zoox, similar to Waymo, is going with the pre-mapped route method of having normal cars with a bunch of Zoox sensors around them and having people in them that map the cities they want to launch the RoboTaxi network in, have a super high quality depth map that can register speed limit zones and red lights and stop signs and that kind of thing, and they basically will record all of that data for a city, then load it up to the network so that these vehicles know where streets are, they know where stoplights are, they know where stop signs are, and they're aware of all the speed limits. They don't have to read all of that stuff in real time, and basically it means having more of a geo-locked approach towards autonomous driving, as in these vehicles will work within a certain jurisdiction, but you won't be able to hail one of them from a neighboring city and have one that's in a different location come drive way out to you, and likely not going to be very great for road trips. If you need to drive across a few states in America, Zoox is not really going to be meant for that. It's supposed to stay within the city. So I think the main issue I'm seeing a lot of people have with Zoox is they're kind of misunderstanding the target demographic. I'm not saying this to diss on Zoox. I actually actually think it's really interesting, and I want to see more vehicles designed with the idea of what if there's no driver. And honestly, there's going to be a lot of room in the market for electric vehicles in the future, so making sure lots of different companies are trying their own approaches when it comes to autonomous driving is good, because we can see which ones are effective and which ones are less effective. And personally, I don't think Zoox is a threat to Tesla's full self-driving or their RoboTaxis, because Tesla's going for a whole different type of demographic. Plus, I think theirs is built a little bit more on profitability than Zoox is, because Tesla is literally charging people to train their neural net and to train their algorithms to make full self-driving better. You have to pay Tesla for the privilege of testing their software. Now it costs $10,000, plus that's on top of the profit margins of just selling the vehicle as a whole. Zoox doesn't plan on doing that. And if RoboTaxis from Tesla and Zoox become a thing, Tesla is claiming that you'll be able to buy one of their vehicles and buy the full self-driving suite and then make an annual living off of that. Whereas Zoox is planning to be more of just a ride-hailing service, and they own the vehicle, and the only thing the consumer really gets to benefit from is taking these vehicles from point A to point B. At least right now, they don't seem to be interested in selling these vehicles to other people and having a career out of RoboTaxi ownership, whereas that's what Tesla wants to achieve, and they want their vehicles to be able to do road trips and be able to summon a vehicle from across the country. And Tesla's not doing the pre-mapped route because they want their full self-driving computers to be better at analyzing their surroundings in real time and not have to rely on pre-mapped routes. That way, hopefully in time, you can just wake up with an update and now your vehicle can basically drive itself anywhere in the country. Again, I've talked a lot about on this channel how I think that might be many, many years away, but Zoox is not really aiming to achieve that same thing. So basically, one of the things I'm most curious about with Zoox is how many vehicles they plan on actually building and deploying over the next few years. I imagine it's not going to be as many as Tesla, and I imagine the demographic that these vehicles will serve will probably be a lot smaller anyway, because it's going to be limited to people who live in densely populated areas wanting to drive to the grocery store or wanting to go see a movie if the movie theaters don't close or something like that. You know, just basic driving around town, whereas Tesla is trying to make vehicles that can do cross-country road trips without any interventions, and also let you yourself buy several vehicles worth of RoboTaxis and make a living off of it. So I wish Zoox the best. I hope that they're able to bring their vehicle to market, and I do recall seeing, at least in one interview, the CEO said that they're not expecting to launch next year, so probably still a few years away, and I would love to see what their plans are for mass production when it comes to supply chains and where they want to get their batteries from and how many vehicles they think they can actually deploy. And until then, sounds like it's going to be quite a niche, small market, sort of how Waymo right now only works in a few select cities, and it only works towards certain destinations, and it requires a lot of people overseeing it. But either way, I definitely think Amazon's priorities are set on who can solve autonomous driving first, because we want to work a lot on figuring out how to simplify our shipping costs, and if Amazon can find a way to deliver packages to consumers without having to pay a delivery driver, you know, Bezos is going to be all over that completely. So that's what I think a lot of the motivation is for Amazon investing in Zoox, and who knows, maybe a lot of the tech and software they discover from this startup will eventually find its way into Rivian's vehicles, and those will then have something parallel to that of Tesla's full self-driving suite. But at this point, it doesn't seem like there's much of a collaboration going on at all. So what do you guys think of Zoox? Is it an interesting business concept or just a stupid looking car that you think is going to die off in a few years? Feel free to let me know. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.